Welcome to the Financial Advocacy Podcast. I'm your host, David Kinder, the tax-exempt wealth guy, registered financial consultant, and chartered life underwriter, and my co-hosts, Michael Moffat and Kurt Gibbs. This is a disclosure where we say you can't hold us accountable for any actions you take on your own, just like all financial entertainment shows. We are not providing legal, tax, or securities investment advice of any kind. We do provide general investment information for educational purposes only, and we will discuss alternative financial strategies that do not contain or include securities. You can view all of our disclosures and disclaimers at our website at www.financialadvocacypodcast.com. Look both ways for across the street. Let's get started. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. David Kinder here. And today I am absent of my co-hosts, at least at the moment. We'll see if one of them chimes in. The other one, well, I think we're supposed to connect a little bit later tomorrow. But today is week 9 of the financial advocacy or financial literacy series that I've been put together. And this one is a little more timely. It's definitely going to be more interesting. However, to talk about taxes, government spending, and the national debt and the economy, my goal is to actually remove some of the current events from today, at least at this time. And the reason is we want to come into this with some clear-headedness as best as we can. And so when we can do that, that much the better. And we can bring some context into today's current events. With current events, let's talk about it for a minute. It's March 11th, 2025, and right now we are full swing into Trump's second administration, and we've got Elon Musk heading up Doge, and it's been interesting as far as all of the tweets. We thought we had tweets bad before with Trump first term, right? Now we've got tweets directly from Elon Musk about all the stuff that they're finding in the research and such of where is government spending going. And I find it interesting. And by the way, sometimes they don't post it accurately. But let's take a step back. This is an introduction to the topic. And why does this stuff even matter in the first place? And give me a quick second here. And once he shows up, we'll take care of it. Okay, so here's the thing about our government. Taxes is how we pay for the goose that lays the golden eggs. We have certain freedoms in this country, and social media being one of them. As far as I remember, I think there's actually a law in the UK where you could be held accountable for certain posts, and you could be arrested for them. So we have some better freedoms than other countries do. But let me ask the class a question. What is our national product? What does the United States produce? And I'm not talking about from private enterprise. I'm talking about as a country, as a government, what is our biggest product? And quite frankly, we don't have one unless you want to count democracy. Democracy, you might be able to count that as a product, which is one reason why the country, the United States gets into different wars. We protect the freedoms of other countries, things like that. But basically, we don't have a product. There's other countries that do have a national product. Let's take Dubai. I happen to know someone who lives in Dubai, rather wealthy individual himself. Dubai has absolutely no tax system at all whatsoever. And so with no tax system, where are they getting the revenues from? They get it from exporting oil. The country gets all kinds of income because of their oil exports. So if we had massive exports, could we be like Dubai? I don't know. Our government tells us that we have more oil here than anywhere else in the world. I don't know if that's hype or not. No clue. And I wouldn't even know where to look that up. But we have this huge national debt. And our debt right now is $36.5 trillion. It's a massive, massive number. But at the same time, it's not the number alone that's the problem. Let me give you an example. If you had $100,000 of credit card debt, do you have a problem? The first thing might be, wow, that's a big number. Well, that depends. If you have $100,000 of credit card debt, but you earn $130,000 a year, do you have a problem? yeah, you got a problem. If you earn $5 million a year, is $100,000 of credit card debt a problem? No, it's not a problem at all. At least it's not supposed to be. Now, if you have $5 million of income, and I'm not even counting taxes on that, but you spend $6 million a year and you still have $100,000 of debt, do you have a problem? Yes, you absolutely have a problem. You're spending yourself into a deeper hole. So it's not the fact that we have the debt, it's the fact of where's the revenue coming from to pay for it. And we have some serious problems on that. I'm going to share with you a quick documentary trailer. By the way, I've got a number of videos that I'm going to share with you in a certain sequence. We'll see how much of a rant I get into on these. This video was produced, this documentary was produced by David McKnight. He is the author of The Power of Zero. It basically means that if tax rates were at zero, and they doubled, what would your taxes be? Zero. So, but what he did is he took and interviewed a whole lot of people that were influential in economics, in taxes, and this was 6 years ago. I'm going to play this here for you.
The truth is the federal government has lost control of the budget.
Instead of paying for all the new initiatives, whether they're tax cuts, spending increases, all sorts of things that we like, the government's just putting it all on the national credit card. And as a result, our national debt is just going up and up and up. And it's growing faster than the economy. And that's when you know you have a real problem.
Everything is going to be squeezed out of the budget. There won't be anything left.
The road we're on is a perilous one that ultimately leads to the bankrupting of our country.
So we have a crisis on our hands.
All Congress has to do for this whole situation to come to a head is nothing. Because every year that they do nothing makes the problem even more unsolvable.
We don't seem to have the ability to get along and find common ground.
Is the government trying to trick you right now? Then the answer is very simply yes.
So why is this being swept under the rug? Why is nobody talking about this?
Probably because it's not popular.
So I've actually been traveling around the country for about 4 years now, taking the Power of Zero message to different groups.
When you cut taxes on current generations, you are simultaneously raising them on future generations.
It is all driven by spending. Once we have spent a dollar, we've already decided to tax it. The only question is whether we tax it now or we borrow it now and tax it in the future.
So to make up for the liabilities that we're incurring with all the promises we've made in social insurance programs, we're going to have to increase substantially the tax rate and perhaps even double it.
Now, precisely how high it's going to be, there's a lot of room to debate, but people will have to pay more taxes.
People's retirement savings are at risk of future higher taxes.
Well, qualified plans really do two things. They defer the tax and the tax calculation. Now let that run past your brain real slow.
I'm driven by trying to help as many people as I can avoid this disaster that's going to come up in retirement when taxes go up and the market goes down. What are these people going to do if they haven't planned ahead of time?
In theaters, fall 2018, 6 years ago. So, has the problem gotten any better? No, it has not gotten any better. So, how bad is it? Well, here's what's interesting. A lot of us probably file our taxes using services like TurboTax, H&R Block, whatever it is. And when we do it that way, you actually miss some of the disclosures that are in the 1040 instructions. So I'm going to share my screen here. And, share my screen. Here we go. And come on. Entire screen, that one. Okay. If you were to look up the 1040 instructions right now, you would see these major categories of federal income and outlays for fiscal year 2023. That means not last year, but the previous year. Where is all the money going to? So first of all, let's look at what money's coming in according to this. Social Security, Medicare, unemployment, and other retirement taxes. So I'm going to assume that that's not including taxing Social Security. I think that's FICA That's salary or payroll taxes, right? Personal income taxes, 35%. By the way, this one is 26%. We have excise, customs, estate, gift, and miscellaneous taxes, 4%. Not a huge number in terms of the total amount. Corporate income taxes, 7%. So someone might say, hey, let's just raise taxes on all the corporations. That's an economics discussion. We're not ready to have that yet. Here's the interesting one. Borrowing to cover the deficit, 28%, which means we're definitely overspending each and every year, these according to that year. Now, how long has that been going on? Well, if we've listened to Trump's joint address of Congress last week, he said we haven't had a balanced budget in 25 years, which means it's been since Clinton was in office. We haven't had a balanced budget where our annual spending and our expenses matched up. We have not had that in 25 years. So we've got a problem. Now, where is the money going to? Let's look at the other side here. It's going to Social Security, that's income and all the other programs there. Medicare and other retirement, 39%. That's a big number. And by the way, we've got even more unfunded liabilities there if we go to usdebtclock.org. I'm not ready to go there right now. Law enforcement, general government, 2%. Net interest on the debt, 11%. And this is a growing number. You saw how the graph in the video showed up. It's going to grow everything. If we know how compounding interest, which we talked about last week, the higher that compounding works, it can work for you and it can work against you. Albert Einstein is known for having said, may not actually know this, but compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Those who understand it earn it. Those who don't pay it. And this is exactly what's happening in our government. Now we have physical, human, and community development. I assume that includes some research things. That's 7%. Social programs, 23%. And then we have national defense, veterans, foreign affairs, 19%. And by the way, I never want that cut at all. We need some efficiencies, but I don't want anything like that cut. But we all have our certain value systems where it comes to where our government taxes and what government spending is going. But you can see that based on borrowing to cover the annual deficit, the fact that we're spending more than we earn, that's a problem. And it's been that way for a long time. I wrote in my blog, I've got government spending trends. I wrote this in January 2020. So I've got a little bit of some history here, and I went back in time to say what happened. So I started in 2008. I think I went back to 2010 to look at numbers for 2008. I haven't read this in a while, but I knew I wrote it. Borrowing to cover the annual deficit was 15%, which was a 6% increase from 2006. And we got the other factors, but I'm looking at the borrowing here. The next year, what was it? 2010. Borrowing to cover deficit, 37%. 30% in 2012. In 2014, more of the same, 14%. Although at least that's down. That's good. 2016, borrowing to cover a deficit, 15%. This has been going on for a long time. No wonder our national debt is growing. Now, one of the things that I always assumed, and we know I hate that word assume. We know what assume means. And I thought that I thought that our debt was largely owned by China. Well, I asked Copilot. I subscribed to Microsoft Office, and I thought, I'm curious. Let's confirm my suspicions here. Who owns the most of our debt? And apparently, it's our own government. Let me pull this up real quick, because I just searched for this. Sorry, I should have had this up here and ready to go here. Well, I'm not going to make you all wait for it. Let me see. But anyway, it was really interesting that that wasn't China. China owned, it was like just under 900 billion of treasuries. 900 billion. Now that's a nice big number, but we've got how much in debt? 36.5 trillion. China's not the enemy here. Of course, they took advantage of that. Japan apparently is the number one holder. They have just about $1 trillion of securities in the United States, at least according to Copilot when I asked it. So I thought that was quite interesting. Who owns it? It's other government entities and the Federal Reserve. And anybody that likes conspiracy theories about the Federal Reserve would not would definitely agree with that at all the time. You know, we got to audit the Fed, that too. So what I want to do is I want to share what happens if we can't pay our bills. Tony Robbins is definitely more of a motivate. He doesn't like to be known as a motivational guy, but he's definitely a person for catalyst, to be a catalyst in people's lives. And in 2012, he created a video about the national debt when the national debt was only $15 trillion. And he went through an exercise, through some research, and he's quoting this blogger called Iowa Hawk, who went through an exercise of how would we pay our debts this year? What would it take? I'm going to play the video. It's a little bit longer, but it paints the picture in a very dire situation. So I'm going to go ahead and play this now.
My team has to give you the 2012 numbers. So these are the current numbers.
Oop. Let me try that again.
Let's look at some basic research and try and figure out how do we actually pay for this $379 trillion that President Obama and this Congress have planned to spend in 2012. By the way, that's $10.4 billion a day that we got to live on. Just think about it. America has to live on $10 billion a day, and we're borrowing more than $4 billion of that every single day just to stay afloat. So let's start with a calendar, and let's start at 12:01 a.m., January 1st. Now, according to Iowa Hawk, the only thing more evil to a liberal than a rich person is a rich corporation. So he takes those two corporations that he thinks most people that are liberal consider to be the most evil, which is ExxonMobil and Walmart, and he says, forget the high taxes. Let's just take every single penny of their combined 2011 global profits. That's $46.7 billion. Now, if we spend all of their profits, it only gets us from midnight on January 1st to 12:45 p.m. on January 5th. That's after taking the profits, all of them, global profits, the two largest corporations in the world. So that's not too impressive. So he starts to say, let's look at this deeper. Let's take every single penny of profit, every penny that comes from the other 498 companies on the Fortune 500, all of it. That's $567 billion. And that still just gets us to 12:15 a.m. on February 29th, my birthday, leap year. Now, obviously, this isn't getting us where we need to go. We've taken every dime of profit from the big Fortune 500 companies, and it's a few weeks after the Super Bowl. So what do? Maybe we go back and we just grab all the corporate advertising, all that was spent, which was $200 million. That'll run the country for about 28 minutes. But why stop there? Let's take all of the ad money, all the 46 years of Super Bowls. That totals $5.2 billion. If somehow we could have a retroactive tax and get all 46 years of all the money ever spent, we'd still only be able to get to 12:15 p.m. on the same day, February 29th. Look, it's obvious that we're not just getting where we want to go, so we can't just throw it off the backs of corporations. So Iowa Hawk says, let's really go after what liberal politicians are asking. Let's soak those rich people. And we're going to do it by going after, let's start with, let's say, the athletes. They get these obscene sports salaries, and they're not really adding any value. So let's just take all of their salaries from both the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, not their endorsement deals, but all of their salaries. And let's also take the winnings of the PGA Tour and the money spent on NASCAR, put it all together. And that's $10.1 billion. Now I want you to remember, it takes $10.4 billion just to fund the country every day. So we don't even get a day out of it. Basically, it gets us to 11:35 a.m. on the next day, March 1st. After all this, we basically funded the country for 2 months. So look, forget the athletes. Take all their money, but that's obviously not going to be enough. So let's get to all the really rich people. Let's take 100% of every penny that anyone who makes above, say, $250,000 a year, certainly that'll take care of all of our financial needs for the country for at least a year, won't it? Let's see. According to the Census Bureau, the US Census Bureau, the number of households, US households that are at that number, there's 117.5 million. The percentage of those households that make over $250,000 a year now in that income range is almost 2%, but let's round it up to 2%. And let's take that number and find out what it is. So that number of households really above $250,000 in income right now is 2,350,716 households. The total income, check this out, from all those households that make over $250,000 a year is a total of $1.363 trillion. Now we're talking, right? Iowa Hawk says, let's just eat the rich. Let's take everything they got, everything that anyone makes over $250,000 a year, and let's see where that really gets us. It gets us from March 1st at 1 p.m. to July 10th, at 1 p.m. on July 10th, I should say. Now, where do we go from here? We've taxed the richest people in the world, the richest corporations in the world. Look, obviously, we're going to have to really cut some spending somewhere. Well, why don't we just stop spending money on, the wars in Iraq and in Afghanistan? I think there are a lot of us that would love to see that happen. After all, that money is going away to things that could be used for healthcare, or is it just being used really on wars for oil? So let's not spend another dime starting tomorrow. Let's just somehow cut it all off instantaneously, and let's all bring them all home right now. Many people would support that. That, if we somehow could magically do it, would save us $117 billion this year in 2012. That's enough savings basically to cover us until 8 p.m. on July 21st. Listen, who else can we tax that's living too well? Because after all, we need more money. We got to pay our bills here in the US. So Iowa Hawk says this, screw you, Star Wars. We're going to take every penny that you made in movies and toys and lunch boxes, the whole shebang. It took you 35 years for your $26.6 billion, and we're going to come up with some retroactive tax, and we're going to take it all. How much of a difference would that really make in paying our bills? Well, it'll knock us all the way down to 9:20 a.m. on July 24th. Well, look, everyone knows those Hollywood people. They only employ rich actors and producers and directors, and they all live in Beverly Hills. So let's evict everyone in Beverly Hills. Let's confiscate their home, and let's sell all their homes at market value. Look, there's 15,000 homes in Beverly Hills. The average price, $3.2 million. That'll get us $48 billion paying our bills through July 29th of this year. Still in July. Obviously, this isn't working. So Iowa Hawk says, look, Michael Moore assures us that there's plenty of money out there, and it's all tied up with the rich. So guess what, liberal billionaires Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, he says, tough luck for you. His suggestion, you guys are worth $100 billion between the two of you. Maybe it's time for an accidental fall down the stairs. And through the inheritance tax, we will magically keep 50% of that loot, and that'll give us $50 billion to help pay our bills. How far will that get us this year? Well, really, if we killed them both off and took half of everything they have, it gets us to 7 p.m. on August 2nd of this year. All right, look, let's get serious. There's 398 more billionaires in America, according to the latest Forbes 400, with a combined total net worth of $1.4 trillion. He says if we can just arrange a few more hundred accidents at 50% death tax, kill them all off, take all their estate money, and we'll have another $700 billion. But even still, after killing all the US billionaires and all the jobs and opportunities they create, it helps us pay our bills only till 2 a.m. on October 9th of this year. We're still not even to pay our bills for the entire year. Okay, let's forget this mamby-pamby 50% nonsense, he says. Kill all the billionaires and forget 50%, forget their heirs. Take all of their money, all of it. They're all crooks anyway. Take everything and take, well, let's say the 100 or so other almost billionaires. Take everything they've got as well. And that just gets us another 32 days until 12:30 a.m. on November 10th. Well, that's the start of the holiday season, isn't it? So let's pull a little Grinch and let's take all the sales from all the holiday shopping that's expected this year, a whopping $469 billion. That should hold us over till 12:55 p.m. on December 25th. Merry Christmas, everyone. We're almost there. Now remember, This money is for America's poor, so in the spirit of Christmas, let's get rid of all that foreign aid, those dying children, AIDS, all those things that we're trying to make a difference with. Let's get rid of all that. It's $53.3 billion. Let's keep it for ourselves. That gets us until 3:55 p.m. on December 30th. So I'm sorry, but we've still got a date and a little change to pay for. So to cover the remaining $13.8 billion, we're gonna have to hit up every single man, woman, and child in America for $44 each to keep America intact and pay our bills for that final 32 hours of our year, which of course finally gets us to 12 o'clock, January 1st, 2013. Happy New Year, everybody. But what happens next? You see, we've taken all the profits and all the salaries and all the assets and the expenses and the revenues and the holdings of the rich and those corporations, and we've liquidated them. So what happens when you kill off the golden goose? There's no more golden eggs. There's no more profits. There's no more revenues that are available for tax and thus fund our government. What are we going to do? Yet President Obama and our Congress, meanwhile, they're proposing we spend another $3.8 trillion in 2013. And somehow, magically, we're going to spend even more, but he projects somehow that our deficit will be smaller, that somehow our revenues will grow this year. He projected that in 2012, and it wasn't true. Same numbers. He said we'd have a $900 billion deficit. In reality, it's going to be $1.3 trillion, being off by 30, 35, 40%, whatever that number may be. That assumes, by the way, $2.9 trillion in revenues. But where are you going to get revenues from when you kill off all of the possibilities, all of the private enterprise? See, we've destroyed the private capital, we've destroyed advertising revenues, we've destroyed professional sports, we've taken every penny that people have put into new businesses to pay for things, and it's all gone. We ate the rich. We ate everything they had, and we scraped through for 1 year. Now what do we do? Something to think about.
So when I'm looking at the national debt, our spending, that's the context, that's the lens I'm looking at it with, because we're in trouble. And that was 2012. So that was 13 years ago. And that was when the national debt just topped 15 trillion. We're at 36 now. We've more than doubled it since then. Now, here's the thing. I can't change the government. Not my job. All I can do is vote. By the way, it takes me back to, what was this country fought for? Taxation without representation. Taxation with representation ain't that great either. I'm just saying. By the way, I just want to share that I did find my source on that. What was it? Who's the primary creditor of the United States debt? And it's actually the U.S. government itself through intergovernmental holdings. This includes entities like Social Security Trust Fund, holds a significant portion of the debt. Beyond that, the Federal Reserve, and that it purchases treasuries. And again, the Federal Reserve is a private entity. You just got to make sure that's clear. On the international front, foreign investors and governments hold a substantial share. Japan and China, they hold quite a bit. How much of the U.S. debt does China own? Again, under 900 billion. They're not as big of a holder of our national debt as I originally thought. And then it says Japan holds over $1 trillion. But let's look at all of that spending resulted back in 2011, the first credit rating downgrade. And Mike, it's nice to see you. I'll have you join in here with us. I've been on my rant, as you can tell, but so I'm on a roll here. So give me a moment.
No, I was listening in on my way home, so sorry I'm late.
All right, well, glad to have you here. So there's been 2 credit rating downgrades since 2011. There's one in 2011. The other one was in 2013. No, excuse me, 2023. Didn't realize that. So here's the thing. Standard & Poor's, it's more than just a stock market index. It is actually a rating system. And they first downgraded the American government, the United States, from AAA to AA+ on August 5th, 2011. First time in history that we had something below a AAA rating. Now, something that for all of our insurance agent peers, something you may notice is that ever since then, we have not had a AAA rated insurance company. And that's because, and if we think about it, it makes sense, an insurance company cannot have a higher rating than the country it's domiciled in. So all of our top companies, and I'm thinking about the Northwestern Mutual, Mass Mutual, Guardian, New York Life, those are the big four that normally have the AAA ratings. They're not AAA rated anymore. They're the top rated, but they're AA plus because you can't have a higher rating than the country you're in. And those ratings have not been restored for the insurance companies or the federal government from Standard & Poor's. And Fitch ratings also downgraded. That was in 2023. Marking the second time in history the nation's credit rating was lowered. And they're citing factors as rising government debt, fiscal deterioration, government challenges, including repeated debt limit standoffs. Yeah, it's like they're actually watching the news, right? I mean, they're paying attention. And by the way, just my little joke here. AAA Auto Club is not AAA rated. I just want that out there.
It's just the name.
It never has been. It's just the name of the company. They call themselves AAA. They happen to be A+ rated, if I remember right. So they're well rated, but they're not a AAA rated company. It's just funny. So there's been some big challenges. And I would really love to see the United States get a better hold of things and increase our credit rating again, because that improves everything for everybody. At least I believe so. But what happens if we don't? And what if everything that Tony Robbins talked about, the seizing of everything, happens? What would it look like? Well, there is a book that was written. It was written in 1957. Actually, it was published in 57. Ayn Rand wrote Atlas Shrugged. And I've read it once. And anybody that's into literature knows that you're not supposed to ever say this, but I like the movies better than the book. She put all these speeches in there. I'm just like, look, they're at a wedding. What do I do these speeches for? And this is not a best man toast either. So anyway, I want to share what one of the you remove this one here. What would it look like on a news conference when we have completely bankrupted our country and it's about to do something very different? So let me share with you what it could look like. They called it Directive 10289.
In the name of the general welfare, to protect the security of our fellow citizens, it is decreed for the duration of the national emergency that the statutes of Directive 10289 shall remain in effect. 1. All employees and wage earners of any kind shall henceforth be attached to their current jobs and may not be discharged or quit said employment. 2. All industrial and manufacturing entities shall henceforth remain in operation, and owners of said establishments shall not quit, retire, sell, or transfer their business. 3. All copyrights and patents pertaining to any invention, formula, or process shall be transferred to the federal government by means of gift certificates signed by the present owners of said copyrights and patents. 4. No new devices, inventions, products, or goods of any nature are to be created or manufactured, and the Office of Patents and Copyrights is hereby suspended. 5. Every company or sole proprietor shall henceforth produce the same quantity of goods or provide the same services as in the basic year, the year just ended, no more or no less. 6. Every citizen, regardless of income, shall henceforth spend the same amount of money as in the basic year. And 7. All wages, prices, dividends, and other forms of income are hereby frozen at present figures. Directive 10289 shall be administered and enforced by the Unification Board, whose decisions will be final.
It's all happening so fast.
Okay, here we go. And so what that basically required of government to do is that they froze the economy exactly as it was. You can't change your job. You can't leave your job. You can't sell your business. You can't retire. Nothing. You are now in indentured servitude of the government because they said so. All the industrial manufacturing, they have to remain in operation. Basically, you're ordered to work for the government. The third one I thought was interesting. Copyrights and patents shall be transferred to the federal government by means of gift certificates. I thought a gift was freely done. No, they are seizing it, but they're making sure that the title is on the gift certificate. No new devices, inventions, products, or goods of any nature. And they did this to keep the balance of power. They wanted to make sure that we kept opportunity equal, which basically means no opportunity for anyone, according to this. Every company, sole proprietor shall thenceforth produce the same quantity of goods and provide the same services as in the basic year, no more, no less, which means you have to produce at the same amount. You can't lower it. You can't save. You can't get any advantage over anybody else, whether by increasing or decreasing. Can't do that. Every citizen, regardless of income, shall henceforth spend the same amount of money as in the basic year. So you can't save anything more. You can't improve your habits. No, you have to do the exact same thing you did before. Wages, prices, dividends, other forms of income are frozen at present figures. And because the book was written in 1957 is about 17 years before ERISA, and ERISA being about retirement plans, what they left out was you're going to turn over your retirement plan to the federal government in exchange for a gift certificate or an IOU. That's what that would look like. And that would be how communism ends up being established in the country. Now, that might be a little bit of a rant. I hope it's an extreme. But if we keep going the way we're going, if we keep having our credit downgraded, our currency worse, and worse, and inflation keep going up, well, what else is going to happen? It's going to be anarchy. And it's going to be a problem. And the only thing that we as citizens can do, and I am not suggesting anything physical, the only thing we can really do is vote for how we can keep the country going. We have to vote for the proper representatives. No one's going to say I'm trying to lead a revolt. I'm just saying that you need to have the right people in place so they can help with this. Now, what happens when our money is not worth much or not worth anything, and we're basically trading goods for goods? Well, we hope we're trading goods for goods, because really what ends up happening is that you're not working for money, you're working in labor for other people. And you have the elite, whoever the elite is, who's in charge of everything. Because even in the video, they said the Unification Board is the one in charge of everything. Well, now they're the elite because they get to be in charge of all of us little serfs working for the government because we're locked in place. But also means that life insurance is gone, because if there's no real value of your labor, there's nothing to insure. You're easily replaceable. If we actually got to that point, there would be something called universal basic income. I've heard those proposals before. We would have that. And there would be only one other way to get around that. And that is that if you have personal wealth, if you put that into annuity contracts, the annuity contracts would probably be left alone. And you could have that as your income as opposed to what the government says you get to have. So that is a very dystopian worldview. It does shape how I think. It does shape that I think we're in a constitutional crisis on this. And even with all of the efforts of Doge, which I'm grateful that they're doing it in a crazy way, but I'm grateful that it's being done. The main thing about Doge is that at least they're bringing it to light. Hopefully they're going to represent everything right. Because some of it was not represented right. So when Trump was talking about transgender mice, that wasn't what it was. It's a research thing that actually can have ripple effects of various diseases. So it's not transgender, it's something else. It's just they completely misquoted that thing. So when we're looking at taxes, government spending, and the economy, how can we protect what we already have? Well, the government can seize your retirement plans at any time. And you might say, well, how do we know this? Well, if you look at how a check is made payable to your retirement plan, whether it's an IRA or you put money in a 401k, it's payable to the institution, FBO, your name, for benefit of. You are the beneficiary of the plan. The custodian is the financial institution. So you make it out to Fidelity Investments. You make it out to, who's the other big one? Vanguard, whatever.
Vanguard,
So you make the check out to the institution for the benefit of you. It doesn't say who the plan owner is. And we've talked about that before. What does the A in IRA stand for? It is arrangement. And who sets the arrangement? Who sets the terms? Who determines how much share of your arrangement they get? It's all there. And so when I look now at making investment or long-term savings plans, I keep this in mind. I keep the national debt. I keep our government spending in mind. When I first got started in the business and I got my securities licenses, I was working with a mentor, and he was very, very good. And what he taught me was, David, you need to read the Wall Street Journal all the time. It should be sitting on your desk. You should have the impression that you are in the know and that you have an opinion. I hate the Wall Street Journal. It's not their fault. I just can't stand reading it. It makes me anxious. I don't like reading that thing. And then I figured out that the Wall Street Journal and the stock market is not the tail that wags the dog. It's the federal government. And I think we can do a far better job of predicting the economy based on demographics, how old people are, and their general spending trends, along with where's the government spending their money. And we put those together, we could probably make a pretty good assessment of what's going to be really good for the future, which would be primarily healthcare, technology. Those are the main ones I'm thinking of. Oil might be interesting. We'll see. But when our money ceases to be worthwhile or that has value to it, well, it freaks me out. I like it and I don't like it. Francisco Diaconia says this in the wedding toast scene. I don't know why people break into a lecture at a wedding, but it is what it is. I actually have the video. It's 2 minutes. Forget it. I'm not going to share it. But here's what he finishes up with, which when money ceases to be the tool in which men deal with one another, then men become the tools of men. Blood, whips, chains, or dollars, take your choice. There is no other. So what I do like about Doge is that they're acting more like the Rocket Money commercials. I keep seeing those on TikTok. We'll give you the day off if you tell me how many auto subscriptions you have. I have a few. I keep track on everything. I've got 1 or 2 personal, and then I got about 8 business ones. And that's generally what it is. And personal, I've got Paramount Plus and Netflix when Cobra Kai comes out. Now that part 3 has come out, I'm good. I don't need to renew unless I get nostalgic for it. Paramount Plus, I need my Star Trek. Other than that, for business, I got Wix, Zoom, StreamYard, Opus Clip, Microsoft Office, and my designations because they require annual certification.
You don't have Amazon Prime?
Amazon Prime, what's the point? I'm patient. It's only $15 a month, right? I can't even remember what's Prime. But
I maybe have a handful at most. I don't have that many. I happen to have Prime, and then I have a couple others like Discovery Plus, and that's
there you go.
Really about it.
Discovery Plus is good. I like that one. I do it maybe once a year. I visit that one because I like to visit the business reality shows, Restaurant Impossible, Hotel Impossible, and there's a few.
We got Discovery Plus when we canceled cable because it's only like $6-7 a month instead of paying $120 a month for cable to watch.
Yeah,
most of the channels we watch on Discovery Plus.
Yeah, I mean, if it works for you, that's perfect. So one of the, sometimes people ask, what's the solution? When are we going to quit fighting amongst ourselves? When are we just going to all go along to get along, kind of a thing? And I look at Star Trek. Again, I love Star Trek. Live long and prosper. But Star Trek created a completely new economy because with replicators and transporters, you could go anywhere and get anything. And other than the electricity to power the stuff, you don't have to worry about anything. There's no more scarcity for anything. And when you solve scarcity, then you can reinvent all of humankind. But
Scarcity.
until we can Scar City, you know what? It just hurts. Okay, I'm going with that. But until we can get to that point with invention, and by the way, when we do get to that point, and we're close with 3D printers, I've seen some interesting things with 3D printers. I've never bought one yet. When we get close to that, that'll be amazing. But in the meantime, someone's going to own that patent, and they're going to get rich off the whole thing. So,
all right,
who knows?
let's get some audience interaction here in the chat or in the comments below. Is it scarcity or scarcity? We got to know.
It's spelled the same way, but so here's the thing. So I'm going to share my screen again real quick because this is always fun. Government. If you think the problems we create are bad, just wait till you see our solutions. That's just a great despair.com thing. And then here's another one. Happy Treason Day, ungrateful colonials. I love sharing that one every July 4th. Yes, there's July 4th in England. They just don't call it Independence Day. And I had asked, I got rid of it, and I don't want to screw up the broadcast here, but I asked Copilot, which is the AI thing for Microsoft, what were the taxes back in the Revolutionary War? And the taxes that were being paid, apparently British citizens were paying 28 shillings, either 26 or 28 shillings a year. And Americans might be paying 1 shilling a year. And we fought a Revolutionary War over that. I think we should go back. If we could have the same tax code as what we had back then, that we have ended the war, and we've determined the enemy is us. We're our own worst enemy of this country. So here's one more part here, and I've got another blog article, and I'm going to share with you this is based on the ProPublica article, the secret IRS files that were illegally leaked. Just to say, because the guy that leaked it was, I think it was either fined or sentenced to prison. But either way, I've got it all. There's 3 principles about the tax code. The tax code is written by the wealthy to keep them wealthy. There are no loopholes. There are only provisions that knowledgeable people understand and utilize in order to pay less taxes. So, yeah, I'll make it slightly political. When Trump said when he's campaigning the first time, and everybody said, you don't pay your taxes, and they're talking about their fair share. Fair share is a moral judgment as opposed to the legal amount he's required to pay. And that's when Trump said, that makes me smart. Right? He didn't have to pay more.
He said, I take advantage of the tax code just like all your other wealthy friends do.
Yeah. And of course, he's very good at the counterpunch, right? Say, everybody you like is doing the same thing. So, why are you picking on me? That kind of a thing. So I'm just saying that Trump is smart, economically speaking, in utilizing the tax code. Because if Trump was going to be tried for tax evasion is a very different crime than tax avoidance, because tax avoidance is not a crime. Tax avoidance is the great American pastime. How can I avoid having a tax incurred if I can avoid it in the first place? And you can structure your affairs in any way you can, in any way you want to do that. Secret number 3 of the tax code: the wealthy people, as disclosed in these leaked tax returns, understand and utilize the power of collateral, borrowing someone else's money backed by their own assets. And guess which assets you cannot collateralize by law? And it's the same assets that the government would first seize from you, which would be your government retirement plans. 401k, 457, 403b, SEP, Simple SEP, STAR SEP, IRAs, Roth IRAs, all of those are in that category. So knowing what we now know, based on the trajectory of our government has been for spending money, do you think that where your money is more important than what it earns? And would it make sense to look at other alternatives compared to what traditional advice says? Because traditional advice says you need the maximum rate of return of your money, that the biggest pile you have is most important. But what if where your money is more important than what it earns, and you can avoid all the taxes involved. I still think that there's an unnatural relationship between the U.S. national debt and Wall Street, because the national debt keeps getting to higher ends, and so does Wall Street. Doesn't always make sense to me unless you start thinking, gee, they might be in cahoots together. Yeah, I think that ERISA was set up to do that, so that you can have tax deductible dollars going into Wall Street. And then if you don't put money in, you're going to be left behind, or at least that's the common sense thinking there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the interesting things about those types of retirement plans is that you're putting money into an account that you have no idea what it will be worth in the future. First off. Second off, you're deferring taxes now at a known rate to pay taxes on an unknown rate in the future. So not only that, the tiny amount that you put into your government-sponsored, tax-deferred retirement plans is much smaller than the amount that you're going to withdraw and the government is going to collect on once you're ready to start withdrawing and paying taxes on it. So the government is actually banking on the fact that they're going to give you a tiny tax deduction now to get the maximum deduction out of you in the future. So who does that sound better for? You or the government? Just something to think about.
Yeah, when we start really putting the math to everything, it's actually pretty shocking. And when I look at a little bit at the solution here, when we look at the capital equivalent value of our solutions, where you have less money, the dollar amount is lower, but it generates far more certainty, far more security, and greater opportunities.
In fact, the rate of return is negative often.
It's negative for the first 10 years. You might break even. I think you break even the 11th year, which is okay. But yeah, it's negative, and yet you have all the liquidity, use, control. You have access to the funds, and you're in charge. So, I had a website. I don't have it now because I'm too busy. I can't develop anything anymore. But I called it Real Wealth versus Fake Wealth. And what's interesting is that when you have money in these plans, you start thinking that all that money belongs to you. If you had $1 million in your 401k, and let's suppose you're fully vested, you've been there 10 years. Let's just throw that number out there. You have $1 million in your 401k. How much of that account belongs to you? And I might say all of it. Let me ask it again. How much of this belongs to you? My name is on the statement. It's addressed to me. Okay. How much of it belongs to the federal government? And what was it, a few months ago, I think I played the clip from Grant Cardone, and the guy said, he's got money in his 401k. And Grant said, I'm sorry. I feel sorry for you. Well, why? Because you're going to be taxed on that when you pull the money out. So I'm not going to be taxed on that. I said, yes, you are. You're going to pay taxes on it. Well, I can take penalty-free withdrawals after age 59. Yeah, penalty-free, not tax-free.
Mm-hmm.
Big difference, which is one reason why going through some of the financial literacy things that we've been talking about, granted, we're doing it with a little bit of a slant, but we try to show that there's sound reasoning behind the way that we think. And if you're willing to talk to us, I've got my website. It's at the top of the YouTube, so you can reach out to me. Had a few people do that recently, which was nice.
And if you think that the government did people a favor several years ago when they said you didn't have to take RMDs that year because the market was down, they didn't do you a favor. They just waited for the market to recover so they could still get their same tax amount on it instead of having to take a lower amount from taxes because people had less money. They did not do anybody a favor.
What was it Ronald Reagan said? The 9 worst words to hear. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And what do we know about most government plans? The interesting thing about government plans, they usually have a 3-letter or 3-number acronym. 401k, 457, 403b, 529, IRA. They all have different acronyms there. Stuff I love Well, life insurance doesn't have an acronym. I just want
And
to count CVLI.
401k, 457, those are all just line items in the tax code.
Mm-hmm. And the line item for IRAs is Internal Revenue Code 408. So you wonder, what's a 401 plan? Well, that's a 401k or 401h if you want to have some really fun with that. But you want to talk about 408 plan? That's an IRA. And there's a 409, a 412, a 419, and different ones have different advantages. The question is, does it make sense? And has all of those terms been fully disclosed so we know how our wealth building decisions are being formed? And by the way, our mainstream financial entertainers, they don't know this stuff. They just don't. At least they come out saying that, beware of tax deferral as much. They start talking about Roth accounts. But remember, with Roth accounts are tax deferred for tax-free withdrawals, much like municipal bonds were through the early 1980s when they changed the tax code on Social Security. And they created this thing called the provisional income formula, income calculation, where they included the tax-exempt interest, tax-free interest for these municipal bonds. They're going to add it back into tax your Social Security. Well, I think that, and it hasn't happened yet, I think Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks will eventually have that happen. Unless, this is not a political commercial, but Trump says he could abolish the IRS and eliminate the tax code, and all power to him if he can do it responsibly. I think he overpromised. I don't think a lot of that's going to happen. And even if it did, unless a constitutional amendment goes in place to prevent it from reforming or respending to the previous levels, we're going to be back to where we were, maybe even worse off. So that's my opinion, and it should be yours. No.
I knew that was coming. That's my opinion, and it should be yours too.
So anyway, this has been an interesting one because there's a little bit of philosophy in this, but I wanted to show where my thinking has come from on this and to bring a new perspective of how do we make our voting decisions? How are we voting for the future of our country? And by the way, just so you know, both sides are evil on this. It takes both to create the mess, and they keep postponing the decisions down the line. And so here's my slight, not endorsement, but my appreciation that Trump and Elon are trying to go in there and figure out where is all this money going. Does it make sense to keep it going, or do we stop the funding now? Whatever it's going to be, I'm just glad that they're doing it so that we can get a handle on all this stuff. And hey, if we can abolish the IRS, audit the Fed, who knows? Anything is possible. We'll see. Hey, we're right at an hour. Any final thoughts here, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, we went over a lot of different things today. I'd say some of these things are just food for thought, something to maybe go back and listen to again to kind of think about. I think the most important thing in all of this is no matter what decision you decide to make in terms of these different accounts and where you put your money and things like that, I think the overall main idea is just to understand how they work, how they're treated by the tax code, and the pros and cons, the benefits and the consequences of how each of them works, and which one really would be the most beneficial for you as an individual based on your goals and things like that. So really, I can't say any of them are per se bad necessarily. It's just understanding how they work and how they're going to affect you during both accumulation and distribution side. When you're going up the mountain on the accumulation side and then down the mountain on the distribution side, just understanding how that is going to overall impact the amount of income you'll have and the amount of liabilities and all the different things that you're going to have and what the consequences of them are is just an important thing. And whatever you decide, great, just understand all of the different aspects of what your decision is.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I do too, just to try to keep on top of it, and I'm really grateful for Nick Palavita, who is, I guess, a program content director with Pod TV. I do show up on there when I'm invited. And I get to talk to Honorable David Walker, who is the former Comptroller General of the United States. He headed up the General Accounting Office from 1998 to 2008. So that was a couple of years of Clinton and through the Bush years. And so it's neat to see his perspective. He's serving on a couple of committees trying to make sure we've got the right kind of reforms going. We're grateful for Elon, but we just know that he's a little crazy while he's doing it all. So it is what it is. But I like keeping in touch, and to be able to say I know David Walker is pretty cool. So, anyway, I think we're good on that part.
I think we're good for today.
We're good. So we'll come back again next week. We got 2 more weeks of our financial literacy series. I do not remember what's next for the next 2 weeks. I know that week 12, I think, is I can't remember. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to think about it. I'm good. All right. Catch you all next week. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Make it a great day. You have been listening to an episode of the Financial Advocacy Podcast. As a reminder, you can't hold us accountable for any actions you take on your own. Just like all financial entertainment shows, we are not providing legal, tax, or securities investment advice of any kind. We do provide general investment information for educational purposes only, and we will discuss alternative financial strategies that do not contain accrued securities. You can view all of our disclosures and disclaimers at our website at www.financialadvocacypodcast.com. Look both ways for across the street. Thank you for listening, and make it a great day.